Hello and welcome back. We're here working on Sabotage, and the next step we have to do is create a whole bunch of helicopters. So we need some kind of object to control the helicopters and launch them into the air. So we're going to need an object called an air traffic controller. To do this, we go under Game Object and create an empty object. We're going to call this object ATC for Air Traffic Controller. So an empty object just has a name and it has a transform and pretty much nothing else. We're going to add a script called Air Traffic Controller, and we're going to edit the script. So an air traffic controller needs to keep track of the helicopter object, which it's going to be spawning, and a delay timer for when to launch it. And we're going to have it pick a range between this minimum and maximum of a launch delay for it to spawn the helicopters. So in the update routine, we're going to have it count down a timer, and when that timer goes below 0, we will create a new helicopter, and then we will pick another delay time between the minimum and the maximum and set that to the timer. So every so often it's going to create another helicopter. Let's go back to Unity. So our helicopter is here on the scene, and that's what we use to work on it and play around with it. But since we're going to be spawning lots of them, we need to create a prefab of the helicopter. Let's drag the game object onto the asset panel, and here's our prefab of the helicopter. Let's delete the helicopter from the scene. Now select the air traffic controller, and we'll go to the helicopter object entry in the air traffic controller script, and let's pick from the assets the helicopter. For our launch delay, let's pick between 1 and 3 seconds. And let's run the program. So the air traffic controller is doing the job. It's spawning helicopters every so often, but it's not doing a good job of keeping the helicopters from flying through each other. So we need to add some routines to actually control the flow of traffic through the space. Let's go back to our air traffic controller script. We need more variables to control the helicopters through the airspace. This is an array of Boolean flags, which will keep track of the directions for the different levels. This is an array of integers, which will keep track of the number of helicopters in each level. And this value will set how many helicopters we're going to allow maximum on a level. You need to allocate space for those values. We're going to create 4 different levels. So this creates an array of 4 booleans. This creates an array of 4 integers. And we're going to set the values for the 4 levels to 0. So this is our function, which is in the air traffic controller, that's going to be called by the helicopter to get the next available level. The helicopter will tell us what direction it's traveling. And we're going to go through all 4 of the different levels to see if there's a spot available. If the first level we check is empty, then we're going to pick it for our direction, and we're going to add ourselves to it and return that level back to the helicopter. If it's not empty, we're going to see if it's traveling the same direction that we are. If it is, and it's not full of too many helicopters, then we'll add ourselves to it and return that value to the helicopter. If neither of those options work, we're going to check the next level. And if all 4 levels are unavailable, we're going to return -1, which will tell the helicopter that it can't fly anywhere. We also have a public routine here for the helicopter to tell us when it's left the level. Now we need to get the helicopter to call these functions. Here in the helicopter controller, we need a game object to point to the air traffic controller so we can call its routines. Let's switch back to Unity for a second. Looking at the helicopter's controller script, if we select the ATC object and try to pick the air traffic controller, you can see that it's not available on the list. In fact, we can't pick any objects from the scene. This is a restriction for prefabs. You can only select objects that are other prefabs. So how are we going to get the helicopter to call the air traffic controller? Well, here's the trick. We're going to find the air traffic controller by using tags. Just like when we use the routine to find all the bullets on the screen, we can use a tag to find the air traffic controller on the screen. Once we have the ATC object, we can then have the air traffic controller tell us what flight level to use by calling the getAvailableLevel function and passing it in our direction. Finally, we have to check to see if it returns -1. If it does, then we're going to have to cancel the flight. So we'll destroy the helicopter. Before we run our code, we're going to have to create a tag called ATC. And then set our air traffic controller to that tag. While we have the air traffic controller selected, let's set the maximum occupancy for the different levels. We'll set it to 3. And let's run the code. Well, after running this a while, you can see that the helicopters aren't running into each other. But after a while, they stop coming out. That's because we aren't telling the air traffic controller that we have left the levels. Let's go back to the helicopter controller. In our update routine, whenever we destroy the helicopter, we need to tell the air traffic controller that we have left that level. So we do that here if the helicopter leaves the screen, and we do that here if the helicopter has been destroyed by a bullet. Back in Unity, let's change the launch delay to something a little faster. We'll do ½ second to 2 seconds and run the code. We have a lot more helicopters coming out now, and they're not colliding. If you go to the air traffic controller script, you can expand the different variables and actually watch the air traffic controller in action. The level direction is the Boolean flags to say whether it's going left to right or right to left. And the level number is the number of helicopters in each of the levels. Now the sky is full of targets. Well, that's it for this episode. In the next episode, we're going to make the helicopters explode in a big fiery ball of shrapnel. And maybe we'll add a paratrooper or two. Until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.